Welcome everyone to Mind, Music and Movement Foundation's Webinar Wednesday. For those of you who do not know me, I am Beth Elgort, one of the founders. We are so thrilled to have a very, very special lady here with us today to present. I have the blessings to call her my friend. I was lucky to experience Lauren's teachings last year and fell in love with her soul and walked away after each class with an ah. Today, we are facing challenging times, and what could be better than to take a moment for you? Whether you are someone living with a neurodegenerative disease, or you are a caregiver, spouse, or family member, this practice can benefit you, and truthfully, it's good for everybody. Learning to take time for you is grounding. Our foundation believes this is crucial for mental well-being. I now am honored to introduce to you my friend and a teacher that is gorgeous inside and out, Lauren Rubin.
You left me for Klemt.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, let's see if that works. So, Beth, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled that you all are here. That's so nice to see you. And yeah, I'm very honored that I was asked to participate by Beth and the Mind, Music and Movement Foundation. And I'm guessing, well, I know some of you are here because you're my friends and you want to support me, and some I had to arm twist a little bit to get here, and some are here because you might be mindfulness curious, and maybe you're struggling with or have a neurological disorder or disease, and you're wondering how might this be of help. So I have cleverly titled our talk today, Introduction to Mindfulness Meditation. That was very unique. So I just wanted to start by acknowledging how stressful the world we're in right now is. We all know that we're experiencing a global pandemic. And because of this pandemic, for me anyway, and maybe some of you have the same experience, it feels a little bit like there's a boogeyman around every corner and this virus is out to get us, whether to make us very sick or it has killed, as we all know, many people, over 200,000 people just in this country. Businesses have closed, jobs are being lost, systemic racism has been re-spotlighted like crazy since the pandemic. Climate change has been all over the news, the huge fires out in the West. There's a lot of stress in the world right now as we're seeing, as we're living in it. And besides all of that, we also have our own personal struggles, our own illnesses, illness of loved ones. Maybe you have people in your life who have had COVID, recovered from COVID, not recovered from COVID, and you've lost loved ones. We have emotional challenges. Children are being schooled half in home and half in school, or parents are trying to be teachers all of a sudden at home. And just the simple fact of not being able to see our family or our loved ones, or hug your loved ones. It's just a stressful time. And life is that way. So I think rather than leave us floating in the sea of despair, naming all the stressful things that we're all experiencing, I wanted to hopefully offer you a glimmer of light, or the possibility of a practice that you could try that can help weather these storms with a little bit more ease, a little more balance, or at least become a little less likely to have that sense of overwhelm that we have. And that is through a mindfulness practice. So now mindfulness meditation, it by no means is to become passive and let yourself become a doormat in life. And it also does not mean that life will suddenly become filled with rainbows and unicorns. Just ask anyone who's ever tried meditation. When you are sitting quietly and observing what's happening between the temples, it can feel like a really bad neighborhood. So it's not all love and gooey and chocolate sauce. So in terms of the webinar today, what I'd like to do is thank you, Beth, for, see, I didn't even have to prompt you. So here's our outline for today. I'm going to describe just a brief history of mindfulness meditation and how it migrated from the East, the Far East, to the West, to where we are here. Define mindfulness. I'd like to offer a practice so you can experience it for yourself. And I'll leave some time for Q&A. I'm sure there will be some questions or some comments, and it would be wonderful to share that. So
I'd like to interject right here for 1 second that those of you who are with the foundation, I'm very excited to say that we hope to build a practice with Lauren so that if you walk away feeling that same, like I did, we hope to establish a once a week practice, and maybe we'll start out by building a certain time frame of a 10-week to 6-week practice and building upon that. So please let me know through an email, info@mindmusicmovement.org, that you are interested and the times of day that work for you, so we can try to collectively put that in our programming. Thank you.
awesome.
And thank you for being with us.
Beth, you can move to the next slide, which is the definition slide.
It's not going.
Or not, maybe you can't. There we go. So there are many definitions of mindfulness, and so I had to honestly just pick one that was simple. I'm going to stick with that for now. And what I want to say is that meditation itself is something that can be found in many faith traditions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Eastern traditions as well, Hinduism, Buddhism, Muslims. There's meditation that is part of all these faith traditions. And there are different types of meditation, like there are many different types of sports. Some people are into tennis or dance or soccer. And in meditation, there's transcendental meditation, Zen meditation, compassion practice, concentration practice, mindfulness practice. So when somebody says that they're a meditator, it could mean lots of different things. So our focus today is on mindfulness meditation, which is what I practice. You could change the slide to the history. And I like to give a little bit of a history just because I think it's interesting to know where this comes from. Often people will ask, well, do I have to become a Buddhist if I practice mindfulness meditation? The answer is no. I like knowing the history, the origins of some of the teachings and where they come from. So that's my own personal interest. But as a background of where this came from in the East and how it got to the West, I'm going to focus on the Western mindfulness right now. So in the late 60s, Dr. Herbert Benson, who was a cardiologist then at Harvard Medical School, he began to notice that his patients, his cardiac patients, when they came for checkups, their blood pressure was increasing when they came for their in-person appointments, and versus when they checked their blood pressure at home. And he started to wonder about this. Why is that so? And through a number of different studies, determined that it was really about having a white lab coat syndrome, that patients were getting very anxious when they arrived for their appointments, and it tripped their blood pressure into rising. And around the same time, he was asked by some students, some local Harvard students, if they would, if he would look at their own blood pressure to determine whether their meditation practice that they had been starting had reduced their blood pressure. And in fact, that was the case. So this all kind of coalesced. So Dr. Benson started incorporating meditation practices to help lower the stress of his cardiac patients, and it helped with their blood pressure. So this was sort of the beginning of integrating this into cardiac healthcare programming. A similar time frame in the late 60s, early 70s, when there were a number of Americans that were probably at the time referred to as hippies. They were traveling around the Far East, and in 74-ish, got back from India and Thailand and Nepal and Burma, and they brought back to the West these Buddhist meditation practices and began teaching them. And now many of them are well-known names in the meditation circle. Also around that time, more in the late 70s, the molecular biologist and very renowned author and meditation teacher also, John Kabat-Zinn, began using Eastern meditation techniques in healthcare settings. Initially started with patients who were suffering from psoriasis, and discovered that their psoriasis cleared up more quickly when meditation practices were added to their treatment program. So there was clearly this mind-body connection being linked in all these places and woven into our medical care system here in the East, which I think is kind of amazing. I mean, we hear today the term mind-body connection, but it might not resonate until you've had the experience yourself. So I'd love to do a little experiential practice with you all, if you'll indulge me. So if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can close your eyes. This will just take a minute or two. And if you want to keep your eyes open, just cast a downward gaze. Take in a couple of deep breaths, so you really settle your body into your chair. And all I'm going to do is say 2 different words. The first word I'll repeat 3 times, and then the second word I'll repeat 3 times. And what I want you to pay particular attention to is what it feels like hearing each of these words. So the first word, check in with your body. What does it feel like in your muscles, in your heart, in your mind? And then the second word, the same thing. What does it feel like in your body, in the muscles, in the heart, and in the mind? Everybody ready? Okay. No. 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 So feel what you feel like in the heart, in the mind. Yes. 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 Notice any change or not. Just observe what's there. And when you feel ready, gently open your eyes. And maybe if you want to just take 2 minutes, if anybody feels willing to share what that felt like or what you noticed. If anybody is brave.
When you said yes, it made me smile. And
When you, I beg your pardon.
it feels so good.
Yeah. Thanks.
Lauren,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I felt a contraction in my heart space when you said no. From the very first no, it really made me contract.
Mm.
And the same heart space when you said yes, there was definitely an easing in that same space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I wanted to try that so you can really get the internal feeling of mind and body and how connected they are. So the mindfulness practices are now so broadly used in the US and actually also in British Parliament. But you can find mindfulness being taught in childbirth classes, in schools, in colleges, in policing, it's used in prisons, corporations, hospice care, drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers. And there's even mindfulness classes offered on Capitol Hill in Washington. Okay, so that is a brief history, and I am cutting out little tidbits because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I also promised to have meditation practice, which I know everybody was kind of curious about, and some people were looking forward to that. So let's see. So what are we really doing when we're practicing mindfulness meditation? I think that's a question a lot of people wonder. If you've never tried meditation before, some people have said they sort of have this image of like floating on a magic carpet, or suddenly hearing kumbaya in your ears. And really it's not magical or mystical. We're focusing our attention, focusing the mind. You can think of it as mind training or awareness training. So we're trying to quiet the mind on an anchor. Often we go for the breath, just because it's readily available. It's always present. And sometimes if somebody has breathing challenges, we can shift to a body part, the feet or something, but we can get into that. And we're paying attention to what it feels like in the body. What does the breath feel like in the body? Can I feel the breath in my legs? Can I feel it in my abdomen? Can I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it mostly by my nose? And every time the mind wanders off this anchor, the breath, in this case, to thoughts or fantasies or sensations in the body. We're very gently guiding our attention back to the anchor, not to empty the mind of these things, because the mind is supposed to be thinking. That's what minds do. So until our last breath is breathed, the mind will be at work. This is a good thing. And in meditation, we're not practicing rumination. We're practicing quieting the mind. So if you think of an hourglass, we're allowing the sand to settle. The sand is there, but it's in the bottom part of the hourglass. And the meditative space is the top part of the hourglass. So it's more quiet. And then every once in a while, there might be a little sand in there. So that's the first step of practicing mindfulness meditation. And for today, we'll keep it very simple and stay with step one. Because generally, we spend our lives running on autopilot. We do the same things. We get up in the morning. We might have our slippers by the bed, or we might not. We go into the bathroom. We do our morning stuff. Might have a cup of coffee in the morning. You might go for your walk, or whatever it is, your routines. And we don't spend a lot of time thinking about what it is we're doing. It's as if we're being directed by this little boss inside our head, and we go off and do our stuff. Have you ever been going someplace that you go often and you realize once you're at your destination that you have no recollection of the drive there or the walk there? So that's when we're living in this fog, or being bossed around by the little general in our head. So the reason for mindfulness is so we don't get hijacked like her. Because often we'll have an experience where somebody will observe something, or somebody will say something to us, and our mind goes into overdrive, like 0 to 60 right away. And this practice of mindfulness with regular practice helps to get to maybe 30 instead of 60. So instead of going all the way to full tilt in our reaction, instead of being super reactive, we can be more responsive. And that's ultimately the goal. I liked this picture because it helps when I think about biologically what's happening in the brain when we're under stress. Everybody's probably familiar with the fight, flight, or freeze response. And what's happening in fight, flight, or freeze is the amygdala, which is the brain's emotional circuitry, is triggered. And it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of our executive thinking goes, or is manifesting. So we can't access the prefrontal cortex when the amygdala is in charge. In fact, there's a psychiatrist named Dan Siegel who has a wonderful little explanation of how this works with a hand visual. If you can see my hand, hopefully you can see my hand. So this is the amygdala, and this is the prefrontal cortex. And when we go into stress mode, when our sympathetic nervous system is tripped up, somebody cuts us off in traffic, like, ah! And the amygdala is freaking out, and the prefrontal cortex can't manage it. So the mindfulness meditation practice, when done regularly, and this has been proven with many well-documented scientific tests, and there have been some really crummy science too, so I won't discuss that, but there's been some very good science, shows that actual new neural pathways are created with much repetition to calm our ability, or to enhance our ability to contain that response. We still get agitated. I'm not saying we don't get agitated, but we might not go into full tilt as often or as easily. So, and for our nervous system, shifting more quickly from the sympathetic nervous system, which is reactive, to the parasympathetic nervous system, that's where the body can heal itself. So the more you can activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the quicker your recovery period, the better able you are to prevent becoming seized by this anxiety. All very simple, but not easy. So the next slide, please. There we go. So this slide just illustrates what's happening when we're on the proverbial cushion. So not everybody sits on a cushion when they meditate. That's why I said that. Plus the air quotes are kind of fun. So we're focusing. The mind wanders. We become aware that we've wandered, and then we shift back. That shift moment, that's where the mindfulness is happening. That there's a little gap between the awareness, like, oh, my mind has wandered. Then there's a little spaciousness created here. And then we return back to the focus. So that's very, what's a good word? It's such a moment. It's a very fine moment, and that takes practice to even notice it. So I'm only throwing it in there because that was in the slide, and it's definitely worth sharing. And you may not notice that at all. So in this meditation practice, we begin with the breath. We're going to feel it flow in and out of the body. We're going to pay attention to the sensations, not the quality of it. We're not going to judge it, whether the breath is labored or easy or difficult. And every time you notice that your attention has drifted off of your breath, that's an awakening moment. You'll gently, like herding puppies, bring your attention back to the breath. So I think of it as like going to the gym. When you're doing biceps curls, the muscle being built happens in the curl. Then when we relax is when our mind is wandering, and when you're bringing it back to the breath is when you're building your muscle. So you're building your mindfulness muscle more and more every time your mind wanders and you bring it back. That's kind of the money shot, if you will. So it's probably a good time to take a stretch or a drink of water if anybody wants to, or stretch your neck or wiggle around or stand up or something, because we'll go into our practice next. So you can really have the sense of what this all feels like. Awesome. Okay, so as long as you're all in comfortable positions where you feel like you can stay for 15 or so minutes without wiggling. Wiggling is allowed, but we try to discourage it. So part of the practice is noticing a sensation has arisen that's kind of uncomfortable and seeing if you can just ride it out. Definitely, if it's excruciating pain, move. We don't want suffering during meditation practice. Okay, everybody good? Thumbs up. Okay, so if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, now's the time. If you'd rather keep them open and just cast a downward gaze, you can do that. Maybe begin by taking a few slow, deep breaths. And again, we use the breath because it's always with us. And we're always breathing in the present moment. Allowing the body to sink into the chair or wherever you're sitting. The full weight of the body being held by your chair. And sensing your feet on the floor, feeling the contact of the floor under your feet. Noticing the arms and hands resting on your lap or on a cushion, wherever they are. Being aware of any tension in the hips or the legs or the feet. And seeing if you can soften those areas. Just gently, not forcing anything. Just going to check in with some areas of the body that sometimes hold our attention. So seeing if you can sense any tightness in the shoulders or neck area, any tingling. If it's there, just observing it. It's not any reason to judge it, just become familiar with it, notice that it's there. And if you're able to, maybe send some breath, some softness into those tight areas. Feeling into your jaw. You may want to open your mouth a little bit if it feels tight. You may even want to move your head from side to side and release tension in the neck. And softening the spot between the brows, the forehead. As we shift our attention to the breath. And feeling the breath as it begins to fill up the abdomen with the inhalation Feeling the rise of the belly. If it helps to place a hand on the belly, to really feel into the sensation and notice the wave of the breath filling the belly, filling the diaphragm, filling the chest cavity, and then on the exhalation, how everything softens. Doesn't matter if the breathing is slow or fast, just your natural rhythm, whatever feels most comfortable for you right now. There's no right or wrong in your breathing. It's yours. You may also notice coolness if you're inhaling through your nose. You may notice a little coolness on the inhalation just below the nostrils and warmth on the exhalation. And as the mind wanders off into thoughts, observe that, recognize that. No self-punishment for it. The mind is doing what the mind does. The mind is working. Very gently guide your attention back to the breath. Feeling the inhalation, the exhalation, either in the abdomen, by the nostrils. You may feel it in different parts of your body, rising and falling, shoulders. Now drawing your attention to the whole body, noticing any sensations that are present, or maybe sensations that are no longer present that were there at the beginning of this meditation. I will end our meditation with the sound of a bell. I will ring it 3 times. And after that, feel free to gently open your eyes. So congratulations to those of you who have never meditated before, and brava to everybody who has. And, yeah, so you've had your experience, and just really quickly, we went through a brief history of how meditation moved from east to west by Americans. I didn't mention this, but it's worth mentioning that Buddhism and meditation in the Buddhist tradition was in the United States prior to that, with people of Asian cultures that live here and had Buddhist meditation halls and temples. So that was here already. And Americans brought it more into the broader mainstream, so we all could participate. And fortunately for me and people who are interested, discuss the biology of what's really happening when we get triggered and reactive, and how meditation can help us contain that, reel that in a little bit so we can be more responsive rather than reactive. And also we got to have a mind-body experience with the yes or no practice, and then our own meditation practice. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm paying attention to the time and just open this up for Q&A. If people have questions, if you want to ask in the chat, if you don't feel like talking, and just ask in the chat and I can read that. Or Beth can read it to me. I don't know if I have access to it. Yeah, so the end. I'm done talking. Thank you all also for your attention, your very kind attention.